Everyone here seems so happy and content. Just like in China.
That was really very rude of them.
Something interesting has happened in the last couple of years. Recently, I've been seeing several videos about how gaming has changed. Most of them were actually a couple of years old. It seems there was something that happened a few years ago. A whole bunch of creators got together to do basically the same thing. I watched a few of them, and it always boiled down to the same thing. They were saying the big budget games, the really popular ones, don't grab them the way they used to. And I'm just reminded of that meme, first time. It happens all the time with every art form. Things change, tastes change. You're just not the core demographic anymore. Look off the beaten path and you'll still find all the things you're after. And they usually acknowledge that. Yet they still seem to have a problem with it. It's fair enough. That's their business. I'm not judging people for feeling that way. It's just, when I was going to bed last night, I started thinking about the fact that there's nothing coming up that I'm particularly interested in at the moment. I see a lot of games generating a lot of buzz, and I can usually at least see where people are coming from, but with some of them this time around, I just don't get it. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. I fully accept that different tastes, different people are into different things, and the stuff that's popular now just isn't appealing to me. But the thing is, usually I can find at least something, several things, that still catch my interest. And at the moment, there isn't really anything at all. Hasn't been for a while. I bought one game recently, and that wasn't even for me. I bought that for my wife. I still have plenty of games to play. I'm still playing actively multiple games. Just nothing that's really got me excited. And I don't feel like I've changed in any way. It's not that I've lost my passion for gaming or anything like that. I'm still making these videos. I have 2 scripts completely written already. Third one is on its way. I have an idea for several more. So I have ideas for several more. And one of them was supposed to be out already, but I've been dragging my feet recording the footage for it. The other one I already have the footage for, so I suppose I could do that, but I wanted to do them in the order I intended until I started musing on this, so here I am with this one. This one's unscripted, by the way. This is just me musing about things, about where the industry's going, where I'm going, I'm trying to figure out why I'm not that interested in anything coming out at the moment. And I don't think there's anything specific. It's just the games that are getting attention at the moment aren't catching my eye. But I wanted to test for myself. Anecdotal evidence. I did a quick experiment just to see where I'm at, really. So I installed and booted up Atomic Heart, because that's one that's been getting a lot of attention. A lot of people have been talking about how great it looks, and they were really excited for it. I don't want anyone to think that I'm ragging on it. I'm not trying to denigrate it in any way. The only reason I chose it is because it literally just released. It popped up on Game Pass, and I thought, why not? It's brand new. I'll jump in, I'll have a look, and honestly, was far less interested than I thought I'd be. I figured I'd start it up and be like, yeah, this is okay, just not really for me. I'm still having fun with it, and I'm not really. But I don't think that's indicative of anything other than the game just not being what I'm after. It's not my kind of thing. There are a few on the horizon that I'm interested in. The new Like a Dragon Ishin, one set in the past. I do intend to get into that. I like the Yakuza series. but not so much that I've gone out of my way for it. There's one called Wo Long, I think it's called. Looks to be a kind of a Souls-like, I suppose, which isn't really my kind of thing. I haven't actually played any of the Souls-likes apart from Mortal Shell, the Star Wars one, Jedi Fallen Order, which I don't think really qualifies as a Souls-like because it has an easy mode. I actually bought that 3 times, despite the problems I have with it, so there was clearly something about it, and I think it was a great step in the right direction, so I thought it was worth supporting. And the new one coming up, Jedi Survivor, that one does actually very much appeal to me, and with the time it's now releasing, I probably will be getting that at release. Probably pre-order, in fact. Learning about the 5 fighting styles with it, the one with the really big saber that's kind of like a claymore, that very much appeals to me. So it's not like there's nothing out there. It's like I'm just done completely. It's just at the moment there isn't much for me, and it's been that way for a while. I didn't really get many games last year either. There were a few that I looked at and thought, yeah, it looks interesting, I'll pick it up at some point, I'll probably have a great time with it. Just nothing that I really felt the need to buy. Part of that, I think, comes down to the fact that I just have so many of them now. My Steam library is something like 1,500 games. I have around 1,000 boxed games across consoles dating all the way back to the Sega Mega Drive, as well as the PC. Just nothing right now catching my attention. And that's fine. That really is fine. I don't see a problem with that. I almost didn't make this video, actually. I was thinking about it, I've been mulling it over the day, and I thought, you know, I could do, maybe I won't, maybe I will. But then I actually saw another video pop up talking about the death of an entire genre. Again, I don't want to be throwing shade, so I'm not going to go into specifics about it, but it was talking about how a certain type of game isn't really made anymore, and then the majority of the video was talking about several games recently that have been just like that. So clearly they are still being made. They're still out there. They're just not the mainstream, you know? And it sucks. It sucks every time it happens. The type of music I'm into isn't what's popular. Hell, I don't even know what's popular in music because I don't really follow music. The kind of films I like aren't the ones that are getting all the attention. The kind of anime I like isn't what's all over the place. I don't really know what's going on in anime world at the moment. I don't follow anime all that much. I watch bits and pieces here and there. I usually go on recommendations that people have made to me. One guy in particular, he seems to have a knack for picking out the ones that he knows I'll like, and has only been wrong once so far. So yeah, I don't know what's going on, but it doesn't particularly bother me, I guess. I think that's what I really want to get at, is the people that do make these kind of videos, they do talk about this. It's just part of growing up. It's not even part of growing up, it's just part of changing times. Though I have noticed that most of the time when people start making comments like this, they start making these kinds of videos or having these kinds of conversations, it is because they're getting older. Their priorities have shifted. You know, maybe they're married now, maybe they have children. I have children, I have 2 of them. One of them's 18, the other one's 5. Last game I played in its entirety was with the younger girl. It's going to be one of my upcoming videos. We played through the whole game together, pretty much in one sitting. She actually played a fair bit of it as well. And it was great, you know, it was an amazing experience being able to do that. I've played games with my older girl in the past as well. Usually we've done actual multiplayer stuff though, where I played and she's played at the same time, rather than us just playing a single game between us, you know, taking turns doing different sections of it. But it was still a fantastic experience. You know, gaming is very important to me. Video games have always been a big part of my life. 4 decades now. I played my first video game at the age of like 2 years old. I really have been into it for my entire life. And there's another difference I've noticed. A lot of the time when people start making these comments about how this thing that they've been into has changed, they haven't been doing it long. They consider themselves to have been, involved in this hobby, video games in this instance, but just in general. They've been into that kind of thing for a long time now, and I'm like, bitch, please, I've had shit longer than your interest. Which doesn't mean anything. I'm not trying to do the whole gatekeeping thing here. I'm not saying that my opinions, my positions, my experience are any more or less valid than yours. Your experiences are your experiences. That's fine. If you think things have changed and the magic isn't there anymore, that sucks, to be honest. I wish you didn't feel that way. It'd be great if you didn't. And you shouldn't. You don't have to. Because all you need to do is go off the beaten path a little bit. People always make this mistake. They always look at the high profile stuff. The main draw, the big names, the expensive products, basically, the ones with lots of advertising. Just look around a little bit, especially with things like video games. They worked out a few years ago now that they'd had more games released on Steam that year than the entirety of its lifespan before that point. It was about 3 or 4 years ago. Steam was, 2003-ish? I know it was definitely there in 2002, because that's when Half-Life 2 was released. I got that just after my first child was born, literally the day after. I was going to visit her and her mum in the hospital, and there was a gaming store around the corner, and I went round to buy something because there was also a supermarket there. I can't remember what I was getting. But I walked in and there was Half-Life 2, the silver box. I thought, what, sod it, I'll grab that. That's when I first installed Steam. I didn't use it after that for like 7 years, maybe longer. I can't remember why I went back to it, but I did, and I started buying games, and I bought more and more and more. So it was like, we'll say 2003 was when it was released, and this comment about them having more games in 1 year than in the entirety of the time before it. Let's say that was 2018. Let's say it was 2019. Okay, so in 1 year, more games were released on Steam than in the 15 years before that. And that's only increasing exponentially. And I think this is another part of the problem, because I hear a lot of people lamenting that as well. There's so much shovelware, there's so much shit, asset flips, things thrown out there with no passion, just hoping that they can get a few bucks. Game deliberately made bad to get the attention of streamers. And again, all of that's true, and it sucks that you have to wade through the shit, but first time? It's always been that way. One thing I do have a problem with at the moment in video games is the prevalence of remakes. Some of them I don't think are too bad. I didn't like Resident Evil 2 particularly much, but it had been out long enough and technology had progressed more than enough to justify remaking that game. Whether I liked it or not doesn't change that. I didn't dislike it, I just didn't like it, you know what I mean? However, Resident Evil 3, which most other people seem to despise, that I really liked, and was actually the very first of this type of video that I made. Well, not quite, because that was my first properly scripted one. It was also quite short. But there are others, like, I don't want to drop names because it feels too much like I'm throwing shade, and I know how people can be and how they like to misconstrue things, but there are others that I just don't think needed it. I'm willing to give some leeway in some cases when it's a franchise that's fallen off and they're using it as a way of reigniting the franchise and getting people back into it, and they want to spin it out into, a continuing franchise. But then there are others that, no, that is something that bothers me. What bothers me most, though, is how excited so many people are to see games being remade. That really bugs me. And I'm not going to say they're wrong. If you if you're looking forward to new games, new remakes of games, again, fair enough. Not for me. The problem I have with the whole remake thing is, well, it's the same with film remakes. A lot of them, they don't need to be done. There are very few that actually need that. Maybe if it's something that you wanted to be SFX heavy and you didn't have the technology at the time, okay. If you didn't have a big enough budget, okay. But some of them, they're making them to cash in on a franchise and they tend to not be as good. RoboCop, yeah, I am actually going to name this time. The RoboCop remake, it just didn't need to be made. And it wasn't very good because it moved too far away from what RoboCop was supposed to be. And it wasn't even the PG-13, 12A as we call it over here. It wasn't the rating that bothered me about it. It was just the film as a whole. It just didn't work the same way. Those first two, the second one was a bit iffy. But that first film, it was very satirical. It was a satire. It was a lot of social commentary, and the modern one was more of a straight action film. And again, not wrong with that. And to be honest, I think if they'd made it something else and just done the same idea, not made it RoboCop, I think it probably would have done better. I'd have watched it and thought, yeah, it's okay, just not for me. But instead, I watched it and thought, it's okay, it's not for me, didn't need to be made. It's not good RoboCop. You know what I mean? What was the other one? Oh yeah, The Karate Kid. That one really bugs me, actually. It wasn't a bad film. I actually thought it was pretty good. But I remember saying that on set, they are actually calling it the Kung Fu Kid, which is why he does Kung Fu. I mean, yeah, and then the like little bits and pieces here, like him, Jackie Chan with the chopsticks, and he's gonna catch the fly, but then he hits it with a fly swatter. That was intended to be like an homage to the Karate Kid, and then they changed the name, thinking they'd make more money that way, and supposedly that's getting a sequel. I see the same sort of thing happening with video games, and it bugs me. And it bugs me not because they're making that. I get it from a business perspective. Businesses, shockingly, are in the business of trying to make money. What baffles me is the people that are so excited about it, especially the more recent ones, because the technology has not changed that much. So, what is the appeal? Just prettier colours. And even then, a lot of the time, a good art direction will make something look better than turning RTX on. Plus, you can always go back to old games and put RTX on and whatever. The point I'm getting at, the point of this video, before I went off on the ramble, is gaming hasn't changed. Well, it has. It's always going to. It's an evolving art form. Every art form is evolving. Look at actual art, paintings. For a while there, they were getting very realistic, like 500 years ago. Things like the Mona Lisa. And then Expressionism and Cubism and Salvador Dali, Surrealism. Well, he was the one who did Surrealism, right? And then Postmodernism and all that. And people started experimenting with new ideas. And I just think we're at a stage with video games where, you know what I actually think is happening? I think we're starting to move into a more experimental phase again. And I'm just not on board with what's happening. I still appreciate it. I think it's great that they're actually branching out and trying new things, or going back to old things and reinterpreting them in a new way, which is what I think Atomic Heart is going for. It reminds me very much of BioShock, now that I've actually played it. And I didn't like that very much either. I can see why people like it, and I can see why people are liking Atomic Heart. It's a very pretty game. That intro really got up my nose. It went on for like half a fucking hour before I actually got to do something. Then I did a little bit more, and then there are more cutscenes. Not for me. Definitely not. But I can understand why people are liking it. And that's my point. It's fine. Things are changing. I'm not on board with where they're going, but I'm not against it either. And I don't think anyone should be. Just accept the fact that games aren't for you. these games aren't for you right now. But others will come along. Maybe taking a break is a good thing. I deliberately set aside a few years ago, I decided I'm not going to buy any video games at all for an entire year. And I don't even remember which games were released that year. I don't even remember which year it was. I just remember going back and playing some of the older games that I hadn't finished yet. And I had just as much fun. I enjoyed myself just as much. I still found pleasure in my hobby. So if you think that there are no games being made for you right now, and that things have changed, and if you lost your passion for it, maybe look back a little bit. Go play one of the ones that you've already played. Play it over again. Look at something else you might not have heard of. Basically, just look off the beaten path. Try something else. There will always be something there for you. It's not static. It's not like something from 6 months ago goes away. I recently played Mortal Shell. I don't even remember hearing about it. I think it was first released like 2 years ago and was on Game Pass for a while and then took it off. Then it came back on recently and I put that on and initially was extremely frustrated with it and thought it was absolute wank. Even to the point that I rage quit and uninstalled it. But then I'm like, no, let's try this again. I'll jump back in, give it one more try, and I brute forced my way through that first Grisha in the cave. For those who know, you probably know where I'm going with this. For those who don't, shortly after you get into the game proper, you find your little hub area. There's a cave right next to where you start, and there's a big boss in it. And I tried to fight it with the starting weapon without properly understanding the game and without having any upgrades for it, and it was a fucking chore, and I died multiple times, but I did eventually brute force my way through it. But then I started to learn the game, and I found some of the other weapons, and I fell in love with that game, and I thought it was fantastic. I now think it's actually extremely easy, which I know has turned off a lot of Souls fans, but I think that's a good thing. People keep talking about how the Souls games are too difficult, and they're not. They're too difficult for you, maybe, but sorry to tell you this. Sorry. Not sorry. You're not the target audience. Maybe try Mortal Shell, because it is a lot easier. It's like baby's first Souls-like. It's intended to be more approachable. It's intended to be easier to help ease you into it. Give you the same kind of experience, but at a reduced stress level. I do stress reduced, though. I'll play Fallen Order. You can play that on like story mode where people die when you enter orbit around the galaxy that they're in. You just sort of look in their general direction and they fall over dead. Not quite. You get what I mean. I think that's all I really needed to say. I just wanted to sort of ramble on a little bit. And end it. The point I'm getting at to end it, yeah. Games haven't changed. Not really. The focus right now, what's popular, that's changed. But so what? It's going to happen again. Anime is a great example, actually. I know I mentioned that earlier, but anime, some of the classics now. People talk about the mecha anime of the 80s and how amazing they were. And in the 80s, everybody said this mecha shit was ruining anime. Then in the 90s, it was like shonen, Dragon Ball Z or whatever it was. That was ruining anime because that was the new thing. And then in the 2000s, it was moe stuff. And then more recently, isekai, I suppose. I don't know what's popular now. The other stuff's still being made. It's just not what's getting all the attention anymore. So stop following the big budget stuff and just look a bit further. I get from a creator's perspective how if you have ideas that you want to make and you're not getting the funding for it, yeah, I get that. That must be fucking heartbreaking. I get that. It sucks. But where there's a will, there's a way, I guess. I can't really speak on that side of things because I'm not having to do that. But what I can tell you as a consumer is that there will be people who will find a way to make the kind of thing you want. And it might not have the polish. It might not have budget, it might not get the recognition, but it's still there. Just go out and find it. Suppose that's all there is to say, really. So until next time, thank you for watching. I have a Patreon. If you would be so kind as to throw me $1 so I can buy a packet of instant ramen. If you don't, it's fine. Tell me what you think down below. Or don't. Tell me I'm a fucking idiot. Tell me you agree with me. Tell me I'm so insightful. I ramble too bloody much, which I know I do. I'm still going to keep making these things anyway. So that's all she wrote.
Upgrade whatever tickles your fancy.
Weapons are useful.
But I can do so much more. A quick romp with your axe is just a taste of things to come, you handsome beast.